Yeah, I didn't have time, but one of the things I caught when I was thinking and looking and researching the notion of the Russian Revolution in the Global South was some Telesur,
Yeah.
the Venezuelan, well, the left-wing Latin American network, under the headline Bolshevik Revolution Celebrated by Venezuela. There's lots of pictures of folks in red shirts brandishing images of Bolshevik leader Vladimir Lenin, often juxtaposed with former leader of Venezuela's Bolivarian Revolution, Hugo Chavez. And one quote from Freddy Bernal, who's a member of the National Directorate of the United Socialist Party of Venezuela, which called for this demonstration, said, "We as revolutionaries and socialists join in this global commemoration." So for all the problems, failures, etc., certainly in Venezuela, as well as a number of other places in the Global South, the anniversary of the Russian Revolution was celebrated. And in Venezuela, celebrated massively and officially.
Yeah, yeah, that's pretty interesting. Just to add to that, we've been speaking about sort of the amending or rewriting of the Constitution in Venezuela. I dare say, and it's hard to tell, of course, still at this stage, I dare say that a lot of socialist ideas will be embedded in the new Constitution. There's no doubt about that. In fact, some of the notions, like there's this development now in the community, in Venezuelan communities, of the communes, okay? Which is a very sort of socialist concept. And that's how it's developing in Venezuela. That is going to have, most likely, I'm almost sure of that, is going to be embedded as an institution in the new Venezuelan constitution. So I think all these notions will be consolidated even more. And this is just a preamble of this. We're talking about more and more about socialism.
Yeah. How does the rest of South America sort of fit in with what's going on in Venezuela?
I think you would say that the Venezuelans are exceptional. That there has been, that they talked about the pink surge, which is bad on a shirt and not necessarily so good politically as well, where you had the Kirchner government, Bachelet in Chile, Morales in Bolivia, etc., and the Workers' Party, Lula, and then, what's her name? Anyway, in Brazil.
Dilma Rousseff.
That's right, Dilma Rousseff. So there was this move, oh my God, to the left. And now it has snapped back. It looks like Pinheiro, the right-wing candidate who was already president, is going to replace Bachelet, who also was already president, in Chile. The Macri government in Argentina has moved far to the right. In Brazil, it's almost unbelievable. It's like a telenovela, it's like a soap opera. You have the most extreme corruption, and so many politicians involved with it that nobody will get rid of Temer, even though he keeps on being indicted. Anyway, this is a total disaster. So out of all this, you can say that that the Venezuelans uniquely have preserved and flourished. And I think many people, including myself, were very concerned and had some real worries about what was going on there. I thought, why don't they just round these people up and put them in jail, because I lived through the experience in Chile, and it was like Chile in slow motion. But I think, in all honesty, they were smarter than I was, because they managed, instead of falling prey to this notion of taking the opposition and putting them in jail, which would have played into the hands of the Americans even more, they had the ultimate revenge, which is they installed the National Assembly and then ran in elections that nobody is claiming is not free and fair, and won 18 out of 23 governorships, which has, you know, instead of the opposition being martyrs, now they just look like losers. So I think that this leadership to me seems, on the face of it, quite contradictory. This whole notion of the armed forces, I mean, as Marxists, we're supposed to destroy the bourgeois state apparatus, which is particularly the armed forces, but in Venezuela, it's really hard to say what that means. It's, at any rate, it's complicated. But I think if you look across Latin America, Venezuela, which has been the most left-wing one from the get-go, and the only one that really called itself a socialist revolutionary regime, is in fact acting like one in the face of all kinds of things. So that's kind of my view of it. I mean, the question, it'll be interesting next year in Mexico, because a kind of left current and a guy named Lopez Obrador is leading in the polls for president, and people are very concerned. The Americans are concerned, the Mexican wealth, they're concerned, etc. But even that, Venezuela is the only self-identified revolutionary socialist movement in the tradition of the Russian Revolution, and the only one that seems to be winning. So I draw a certain conclusion from that.
Yeah, it was interesting. Canada now discussing their peacekeeping. It came out that Trudeau said, yes, and maybe we will be called on to do peacekeeping in Venezuela. That is interesting, and says to me, you know, another upset that they move in to create a situation where they destroy. And we've seen them do it all over the world in colonies.
But that's a sort of it's quite cruel, because I mean, you cannot preach peace and make war at the same time. That is impossible, okay? And that is the beauty of, just to confirm what Thierry was saying, what's happening in Venezuela. Because in Venezuela, they speak of peace, and they're actually aiming for peace. I mean, it's unbelievable, because in the middle of sort of this economic crisis, in the middle of sanctions, in the middle of threats from the outside for Venezuela, they still manage to maintain sort of peace and to aim for peace and strive for peace. Like, interesting what you said, it's so accurate. Jorge Arreaza, who's the Venezuelan foreign minister, he in fact said at the conference, he was there, and he said that the same thing. Instead of repression against the violence that was occurring in the streets of Caracas, you know, they appealed to the National Constituent Assembly. He said that, same words, because that is the message. And the message is aimed actually to the international community. Now, of course, we have the biased media kind of situation where basically, you know, doesn't report a lot of this stuff. But if we read the right information, I think we can see that and you can feel it, as I said, when I was in Venezuela, that is the sort of the goal. The goal is to achieve peace. But just to top it up, in my view, is the fact that if that is the goal, and that's what Gary has been describing, what's happening in Latin America, I think we really have to defend Venezuela. And I'm not saying this, you know, sort of, you know, rah-rah. It has a deep political meaning that we should really look after the preserving of the socialist movement in Venezuela. Because a change in Venezuela, that means losing all of Latin America. And I don't think we can allow that.
Yeah.
I have trouble with the definition of a socialist state. The height of the economy is still in private hands. I'm sure the officer corps in the army is divided all over the place. they come out of the bourgeoisie primarily. And it seems to me that what Venezuela is something between left-wing social democracy and an attempt by various groups of workers to see some social control of abandoned industry. And even that, and also getting more money out of the economy for the people. And that in itself is too much in this day and age of neoliberalism for the West to put up with. I don't think it's socialism at all.
It is not classical socialism. That is clear. What it is remains to be seen in terms of where it ends up. And I think that that's important. And it's important to make those criticisms. I feel the same way. The army makes me nervous. Why didn't they arm the workers, create a workers' militia, get rid of the bourgeois army? Okay. They say, well, the officer corps is loyal, the Venezuelan army, many of them came from the middle class and the working class, it was a way of getting ahead, they support the thing, look what happened, etc. Industry, well, there's only one industry that counts, and it's in the hands of the state. There was a strike, the government broke it, they've got control of it. On the other hand, it's not the best time in the world to have your economy dependent on oil, given it's only bringing in half of what it brought in a few years ago. I think you can say there's a scad of problems. Is it classical socialism, as we who were trained in a certain classical Marxist method and Leninist method expect to see? Absolutely not. Has it betrayed the trust of the workers and peasants and popular sectors and turned into a neoliberal, neo-colonial regime like so many other so-called liberation movements have? No.
Not yet.
So, rather than say it's somewhere between left social, I think we can say it is a unique process and the final decision is not yet in. And I'll say I was shocked that they won so many states. Not as shocked as the opposition, but I thought, that there was you believe to some degree what infects you when you watch the news, which was all these people, there's no food, there's no this and no that. Then all these people went out and voted for this government that has reduced them to starvation. You begin to think, wait a minute, how corrupted was I? And, I think it's complicated. But, and I don't think the final decision is in, but I do think that this year has seen an enormous step forward. One, without Chavez, so it's not this kind of caudillismo that's common in Latin America. Maduro has nothing like the personal magnetism of Chavez, so it meant that there's a collective leadership that fought the opposition, won the battle for the National Assembly, and then proceeded to win the vast majority of the state governorships. So I would say in that sense, they know what they're doing.
What about those community councils, the kind of decentralization? I'm concerned about that not playing as big a role as it should be playing.
Yeah, I'll let Nino answer that. I don't know.
You say that Venezuela's not playing a
No,
big
he's
role?
saying that the base organizations of the communes are not playing as big a role as they should, or
That's
the
what
role that
I'm
the
faulting
CDRs
Yeah.
played in the
I'm
Cuban
faulting
Revolution.
the Maduro government for letting that slip.
Just to recap a little bit what Gary was saying about socialism. I see this like a movie, okay? So you can see the beginning of the movie, you can see what's happening in the movie, and so on and so forth. If you stop at a frame, at every single frame, you might say, "No, this is not it. This is not it. This is not it," and it's hard to tell. I think we have to see the whole movie and figure out where it's going and what the end is going to be. The trend, though, when we see more than one frame at a time, we see the trend in a positive direction. That's all we can say at this point. But to deny everything, just because this frame doesn't suit my ideology, I get nervous about that.
Okay, I'm not denying everything.
No.
What I'm saying is that wouldn't that help with what they're doing now?
Yeah.
To have those things encouraged?
I'm going now to that. I was sort of maybe replying to the first part, which is, is Venezuela is now socialist. Yeah, okay. Gary mentioned that. I just sort of elaborate a little bit. Now, in terms of, I think it's hard to tell. I think Venezuela has been creating institutions already, popular institutions, community institutions. Two are worth mentioning. One is the comunas that I just mentioned before. Now, the comunas basically are very local, and I visited one actually, when I was in Caracas, we went to the state of Vargas, where they have a comuna up in the mountains, central mountains of Venezuela, and so we visited the comuna. A beautiful community, we spoke with different people there who gathered and so on, and they talked to us about it. What is their intention? The intention is, given the difficulties that Venezuela is going through, they're trying to become self-sufficient, because they feel that they have problems with production, they have problems with the distribution, and so on and so forth. So basically they gather as a commune, and they become self-sufficient. They have minimal support. We met with the governor of Estado Vargas, and he himself confirmed that minimal support, official support from the local government, the state government, and they just go at it. They become producers. They become what they're doing now. They've trying to increment tourism, because it's by the coast, so it's a beautiful coastal area and so on. So they're trying to do that. So and this is just one example in Estado Vargas, but those communes basically are popping up everywhere. There are 1,700 comunas in Venezuela, okay, distributed all across the country. Some are more developed than others. That doesn't mean now they're all great comunas. No, some are struggling, but they are popping up. And another institution that's very, very important, it's what is called the CLAP. CLAP is basically an acronym for a distribution community, distribution centers. So these are people in a community. They establish the center, physical center, where they collect food that gets produced in the community, and they distribute it to those in need. They go out physically to families who might be in remote areas. They don't have access to readily access to food. Maybe someone cannot afford the food, and they provide that. That is the club. So now those are, again, all over Venezuela.
We have to wrap up.
Why are they important? This is wrap up. That both the comunas and the club now are being studied and legislated to go in the new constitution. That's the importance of those, and that's only two of them, but there are other examples of them. Sorry.
No.
It takes a long
Great.
time to explain the
We could
details of
spend the
it.
next 6 hours, but anyway, we have a brief break, then back with another set of discussion.